Not a
All right,
problem.
guys. Well, we're 3 minutes after. I think it's time to hop right into this. For those of you who haven't signed on to a Lightline OnCloud webinar just yet, welcome. And yeah, strap in for a ride.
For sure. Thanks, Sarah. Do we have any housekeeping that we should look at as far as questions or anything that would come through? Do you want to do it through the chat in real time? And you guys can answer.
For questions coming in, the best place to pop them in is the Q&A at the bottom there. And maybe go through it and we'll do a Q&A at the end, because I think they'll just continue strolling in.
We should probably introduce ourselves for those of us that don't.
Not a bad idea.
Where I was going next.
Okay. Who are these people? What are they talking about? Am I on the right Zoom call?
Yeah,
is this a family dinner? What is this?
So sure, I'm Steve McMullen. I look after the Canadian sales channel for Lightline. I'm joined here today. Miss Laura John is helping from the marketing side, making sure that this thing keeps flowing for me. But I also have Dan Silverstein and Sarah Silverstein on the call to assist. You know, if I happen to blow the thing up, they'll jump in and take over. I'm kidding, of course, but they're here, and welcome everyone to another cool Lightline session. Now, I've got the unique privilege with this one that I'm super excited about, because this is a cool program that Lightline is endeavoring into. And I'm happy that you're here to kind of take this technological leap with us, because we are at the forefront of yet another major transition in lighting, and especially with LED technology. Really what the program is we're going connected and we're going full color, and you come along for the ride. So we will get rocking right now. I love to start my presentation with this. To me, it kind of garners a sense of reflection into some of the problems of my layman's construction life, of me trying to do things myself and running into consistent issues. And I think everyone that's joining this call right now can probably relate to this issue from one point in time or another. So at the end of this, you're going to understand why this is an issue if you don't already know, and you'll also understand how we're solving this and what's included in this Lightline OnCloud program that's going to really make this a problem of the past for all of us. So what is Lightline OnCloud? We are going to uncover in the presentation today what is the program, what is the product that is in tow with this, kind of why we're doing it, and sort of the who we're doing it with, and what are the advantages. You know, what is the big gift of moving forward in this type of technology, and how can we take advantage of it and use it. Ultimately, for Lightline and for our purposes as a fixture manufacturer, it is about full color with our luminaires and bringing solutions to the forefront that allow us to create new and unique environments, bring color back, and to be able to really explore and play around with the whole concept of a connected home and wireless lighting and all the solutions that come with it. When we think of connected lighting, to this point, it's usually based at the switch leg. And where we're going one step further with this is we're putting that intelligence, that smart control into the fixture itself as part of the program. We'll unpack what the whole thing looks like, but when we get into full color, that's the real advantage here, and that's what we're going to dissect right away. So with that, you know, like other things on the market, home control or like fully connected systems, you've got compatibility with other types of third-party hubs, Google Home, Alexa, Siri shortcuts, IFTTT, Samsung SmartThings is another. So it's very much a system that's going to enable that type of interconnectivity and giving you those advantages to build out the features of a smart home, and honestly, aligning the pieces and connecting with everything else that's out there. So with that, let's jump into kind of what this thing looks like. In theory, it's pretty straightforward. And actually, when we unpack it, it's not that difficult of a concept. There's a couple of new advantages, a couple of new product attributes that we'll focus on, but we can kind of take it and split it sort of into two parts of the program. On the one side, you've got smart fixtures, you've got devices that are connected, and they interact in a way that we'll get to in a moment. And on the other side, we're looking at legacy type products, things that aren't smart at the fixture level, things that can be made intelligent or smart at the switch leg. So we're going to unpack both of these separately, but we're going to go right to the cool stuff. and that is things on the smart fixture side, going full color, and we'll find out what that entails. First product up is a new one called Sky. This is a really, really cool new fixture that moves this program forward in a comfortable and a trusted way. And what I mean by that is you've got a fixture here that kind of sits right in between where a slim LED and a Luna might be. You maybe don't have the directional advantage that a Luna provides, of course, being able to have that full 360-degree directional light advantage, but you do have the regressional qualities, that regressed light optic that Luna does provide in our designer series. So you've kind of got something in the middle that's going to allow this fixture to reduce glare, again, not give full directional control, but it also allows us now to do some things that we haven't been able to do before. One of those that I'm going to point out right away is the fact that the lumen values on this are huge. So if we think of where fixtures would sit in a 4-inch type of diameter, around that 1,000 lumen threshold is awesome. That's great. And here we are talking about a fixture, and as you can see on the slide, there's full color, there's tunable white, there's a lot going on here, but we're advertising delivered lumen values that are around the 900 lumen range on a 4-inch and just over 1,500 on 6-inch. So this is like one of the key takeaways of this entire presentation, is understanding that this fixture, the Sky Luminaire in full color, that's RGB TW, to understand the acronym, RGB tunable white or white tunable, however you want to slice up that acronym, you can, but we're not compromising white light output levels here. Okay, so this is full color. This thing is capable of producing 16 million different colors, but within that, it's not just a novelty piece that is, red or green or seasonal colors like orange for Halloween or something like that. It's about being able to use this luminaire in a way that we've never been able to before. Just to unpack that quickly, I mean, my 12 years with Lightline, I've watched the transition through LED, and we've had RGB type styles of product before, and mostly in tape and sort of linear accent. And your whites were always kind of blue. The control mechanism was a little clunky. It worked, but it was good for like a TV or certain bar areas or something it was just more of a novelty piece. We're doing it in a downlight, and we're doing it with usable white light output levels. This is huge, right? So no longer can it just be considered a novelty piece. We're allowing the usability of this for any type of application and giving that user the functionality to create their own atmosphere, to actually use the light in that space. At first glance, you might, oh, well, it's RGB and it's tunable white, automatically people kind of go, the head just goes to the resi world, and that can't be true either, right? With these types of outputs, this fixture is definitely capable of handling light commercial application. It's wet location rated, another advantage here. Along with the ability to interchange trims, you might reminisce back to a Slim LED Plus or our Slim Multi that has this magnetic interchangeable trims on it. The Sky fixture carries that feature forward and allows for adaptation between a white and a black, brushed nickel option, or even into something like an OLED bronze. So a lot is going on with this, a little new of a product to wrap your head around, but not something that's so far-fetched that we're going too far in one direction. But we are also getting this additional value add of full color and a usable white output feature here. All right, so that's the Sky fixture, first one out of the gate, and everything that we're talking about luminaire-wise, fixture-wise, basically in stock in the next couple of weeks for Lightline. So we are ready to go with this program in real time. Next up is the fixture that you're all quite likely fairly familiar with. This is the Luna Tunable White. So a little different. We don't have full color necessarily on this. We do have a range of tunable white from 27 through to 5K, similar to what we have currently in our designer series Luna. And that you have selectability, but in this case, it's no longer a mechanical selecting switch. That color control is built in to the fixture itself. Again, we're talking about a smart luminaire here. With this fixture, same advantages as its sister product, I suppose. And the fact that you've got that regressed optic, you've got full directional control, wet location rating, 90+ CRI, all of those good qualities here. And now the advantage of being able to address this fixture individually as itself as a smart luminaire. Same finish is available as before. Slim LED, probably the fixture that's maybe most synonymous with our brand. Over the past 6 years, it's the one that's really kind of moved around and morphed and changed over time as far as, you know, our offering in LED and with downlighting. It's been sort of the, I guess, the platform for us to continue to progress and be innovative. So comparing to a Slim LED Plus, we've got interchangeable trims. On that fixture itself, you had some CCT selection on the face of the luminaire, so it was sub-ceiling accessible. With this one, you still have the advantage of the interchangeable trims, but your color control is now greater than just whites. It goes into the full color spectrum, RGB, TW. So another benefit here, and really now we're talking about two products that can be advantageous for a consumer to say, you know, you've got this Slim LED that you used and loved for 6 years, and now you've got a version that enables you full wireless control and full color, giving you customization, endless customization at the fixture level, which is pretty cool. Slightly higher lumen values on this. I like to point out, you know, we're sitting around 800 on the 4-inch. That's not nothing to write home and cry about, and 1200 lumens on 6-inch. Like, these are very much usable values on the 3K. And I should mention, you know, when you get into measuring lumen values, and Dan could speak more in detail on this later, but we've chosen 3K. That's what we're measuring at, because obviously we have a few more choices now in this fixture offering when you go full color. The 3K tends to be the most commonly used, and that's the value that we are testing on and advertising our delivered lumens from. If there's anything else on that that is any different than Slim LED Plus.
Only since I'm like Beetlejuice and you called my name. That's 3K at 94 CRI.
It's exceptional, right? Absolutely. Thanks, Dan. For these fixtures, these downlights, nothing really different on the driver side or the installation side of things. Most on the call would be quite familiar with how our driver assembly works, changes over the years that we've made to that, our pre-construction solutions, plate, hanger bars, vapor bags, all of those other accessories. Still a twist and lock design between fixture and driver, and it's the same profile sizes. So if you think back a few slides, we had that diagram where it just sort of split it in two. And that's one of the best parts about what Lightline is doing here, is that we're not forcing such a change in things that one isn't familiar with. We're saying, hey, here's our Luna, you know, and it's got an additional advantage. Here's Slim LED with an additional advantage. The only major change or the update is to that sky fixture, but even that isn't much of a reach. It's like, hey, we're just taking what you know and giving you another option and making it a little more advantageous and giving you more benefits to that type of solution. Doesn't stop there. It's not just downlights. So if we think of where we're headed on a low voltage or a constant voltage solution space, we're thinking under cabinet lighting, we're thinking accent, any of those 24 volt or 12 volt requirements that, again, many are familiar with. We're able to take this, and utilizing a new component, we can put this on the cloud. We can make this a smart solution for these types of fixtures. They won't necessarily be color controlled, right? Most of the product here, you'll have dimming control, and that functionality could be fixture based, but you will have the ability to control it wirelessly, put it on the cloud, and take advantage of it that way. Again, tape lights, step lights, our micro pots or micro pucks, things in the 24 volt family that you've used before, used for the years that Lightline has had these to the market. And now it's the advantage of being able to put that on the cloud and giving it control right at the fixture, instead of it necessarily being at switch leg. The middle picture in the bottom right here is the CV controller. This is the magic that puts this thing on cloud and allows us to have that wireless control. Tape is about the best example at this point to discuss this, as we have a few options. On the left, we've got a new full color tape. It's the mood tape, so this is RGB TW. Again, we're getting true whites out of this, along with the full color spectrum to be able to experiment with, play around with, and ultimately create scenes and environments that work for you or the client or whomever we're building this out for. There's a couple of things I want to point out here. Over the years, we've had a lot of opportunity to identify how component-based systems work versus packaged systems. And moving forward into this, we're basically going to offer both. There's a simple way to do it, and I've got a little bar that's blocking it on my side. But we're developing kitted part numbers. So the nomenclature can work in a way where you can build out yourself, and if you know the pieces and the components, you do that. Otherwise, you can look at it as a 5-meter length, and you can have one single part number that is going to reference what is included in that kit. So with that, you can see it on the top right. This is based off of the driver assembly, including the appropriate components to get it connected, along with that CV controller to put it on cloud. I want to point out in that nomenclature, you've got a 1C, 2C, and 5C. This refers to the channels that are required to deliver that communication from driver, CV controller to fixture. There's an easier way to look at it. If you just think of acronyms, you've got R, G, B, T, W. Quite simple. There's 5 channel, tunable, white, or white. It's about the easiest way to look at it. The nomenclature is built in that method to make it simple and easy for everyone. So something to keep in mind as we move forward, trying to make it a little easier for ordering and ensuring that we're delivering the proper components to the proper design for that application. So we've got mood tape, full color, available, channel and lens with that as well, and substantial output levels, just as we would hope to expect now as we're getting true white out of these types of fixtures. In the middle, we've got a tunable white option. The benefit here is you're able to increase the efficacy a little bit, and your exploration of color is more limited to the whites, but it depends on the application. It's just more design criteria that we'd be looking to work through with a product like this. On the far right, a little bit different. This is a current product that we have on our legacy or our phase dimmable side of things. And this is the power tape. This is our highest output option. You'll see up to 550 lumens per 12-inch increment. The difference here, you choose your color. Okay, so beforehand, at the design stage, we want to make sure that if we're using 27K, we're choosing 27K, and that's what's going to go in. We can still put it on cloud, but we don't have the flexibility of color tuning with this type of product. But you do get the benefit of a heightened output level. Excellent for those cove spaces if we really want to make them pop, and some other accent applications. Oh, there we go. Moving through some of the other 24-volt DC products we have, we're talking about in-wall step lights and different types of stair lighters with different types of optical configurations. You've got that asymmetrical feature in square and round, as well as just a wash on the bottom. All of these products are 24-volt DC, right? So we can take that now and put that on the cloud utilizing that CV controller. The fossil design on the left is really, really cool. I mean, this goes one step further in the low voltage concept and really looking at a clean, seamless, finished solution for wall and stair lighting. And you'll see the diagram on the right that helps depict that. It's a gypsum-styled, mud-in, clean finish luminaire, ultimately, that is going to give just a perfect, seamless feature onto the wall, more like built-in, kind of that higher-end resi feel. Again, it's still 24-volt driven, so we can put this on the cloud, no different than the tapes you've seen before, and no different than puck lights and different types of under cabinet that you've also used. So that same controller, 12 or 24 volt, is going to enable us to bring these things on cloud. Just continuing on here, we've got micro pot, micro LEDs, tighter apertures, smaller profiles. Depending on the application, it gives us more options to pursue when we're looking at under cabinet and the types of design criteria for these types of products. Okay, this is where it gets exciting. This is about my favorite part of the presentation, where we get to go back to my favorite slide. So when we think of connected lighting, so we've just talked about low voltage lighting, 24 volt DC, 12 volt DC. We've talked about what the drivers do, how they connect through to the CV controller. And I should clarify with that, you might have noticed that that driver is actually a non-dimming driver. We'll get to that in a minute. When we think of connected lighting, especially those downlights, you've now got a fixture that wants to remain connected all times. It wants to always have power available to it so that it can stay connected. I like to make the reference that it's almost like an appliance, your stove or your refrigerator, coffee machine. These are devices that plug in to the wall, so they're getting full power the moment you plug it in, and they've got onboard regulation. Turns them on and off, you push a button, turns on, push button, turns off. You've got, sorry about this. You've got ways that these appliances regulate their own output. And you wouldn't put your stove on a wall dimmer, right? And just like you wouldn't necessarily control your coffee maker that way. But the similarity is with lighting now, we need to remain fully connected. And what happens when you hit a switch to that lighting load is it disconnects it. So the difference is appliances, they're receptacle based. You plug it in. Lighting, by code, must have a disconnect. It has to have a way to stop power going to it. That's how things are designed. That's the framework that we're given when we talk about lighting loads. So we run into this challenge where we're trying to force a smart fixture, a connected luminaire, to always stay connected, but you're always at the mercy of the switch in which you could inadvertently disconnect yourself. I could walk out of this room right now, tap that wall switch, and yeah, the light will go out, which is great. You don't want the light on right now, but you have no further way of communicating with that fixture. You can't turn it on by a vocalized command through those hubs that are available. You can't go onto your phone to be able to control it and change color and take advantage of those new attributes that we have. So what do? This is the inherent construction incompatibility problem, as I refer to it. And here is the solution. Our engineering team recognized this challenge and came together to develop a device that allows a connected luminaire, a smart fixture, to remain connected at all times, as long as there's power going through the panel, through that circuit. This is the room controller. You can call it a room controller, you can call it a control panel, you can call it a power bridge, you can call it a switch, you can call it whatever you want, call it a dimmer even if you want. But what's really happening here is it is allowing power to free flow through it, to continually engage energy to that smart fixture when it's needed. Not necessarily is that fixture going to have to utilize all of that energy all the time. When the smart fixture is not on, when it's told to stay off, of course, it's only going to use small milliamps of current to remain connected. The big advantage here is that now when you manipulate this device, this room controller, any of the sequences that you push into the face of this is simply participating in the connection on the cloud. It's sending signals to the cloud, to the app, and back to the fixture, and it communicates that way to control the smart luminaire. So now we've given that control to the luminaire. We haven't, in a traditional sense, everything is done through a dimmer or a switch that's going to manipulate output levels, controlling the energy levels, going into a dynamically adapting driver that can then reduce or increase its output levels to a fixture, telling it what to do. Now we're putting all of that control at the fixture to say, hey, if you want less energy, just give less energy, give less light, give a different color, do whatever we're telling you to do. We're going to give that command through a protocol. This device allows it to be done wirelessly, which is great. A couple of advantages here. You've got dimming. That's fairly common now when we think of something on a single gang wall box as a wall control. On and off, yeah, pretty straightforward. This is new. White tuning. You see on the left set of rockers. In a white setting, you can control your whites. That's pretty neat. That's brand new to the market. And my favorite is at the bottom, and the ability to toggle between scenes and favorited settings. This is where we really kind of kick a hole in the sky. This is where we break the conventional mold of circuit design and switch legs and everything that is in with that limitation. We knock it out with this. So just to recap here, we've now got a device that communicates through the cloud when you manipulate buttons on it. This device is a single gang device that is going to install right into the wall where you had that switch before, or where we would rough in our junction boxes to accommodate types of load breaks and switches or dimmers. So nothing has to change. It does require a neutral to be able to maintain its power, but it is not going to affect the power levels of the luminaires downstream. So now I can walk out of the room and I can hit the off switch and it's going to turn the lights off. But what's great is that the system is still engaged. The fixtures are still connected to the network. They're still connected to the cloud. They're going to be able to communicate to whatever other device I want them to communicate with. I can hit that switch, walk out of the room, vocalize a command to Alexa or Siri or whomever, and it's going to obviously reciprocate and work through the cloud. Huge advantage there. And one other thing that I'll mention before moving on is that since we've given the control to the fixture as a smart luminaire, we are also allowing it to be in charge of its output. If we think of the main issue that we get into when we have dimmers and we have fixtures, is it's the possibilities of incompatibility. It's changing energy levels, current levels that go into these drivers for them to dynamically change themselves and produce lowered or heightened outputs. It's all gone. Like, we've removed that concept of restricting or starving electronics of energy. Here we're simply sending a signal that allows that fixture to be in control of its own output. So one of the huge advantages here is we remove the concept entirely of phase dimming, and we allow it to go to a type of wireless protocol that gives the fixture the control of its output. We solve dimming concerns and problems in residential and light commercial with this solution. That's huge. That's really, really cool. So if we were to look at this in a diagram, it's fairly straightforward. I did fail to mention at the beginning that this is absolutely a hubless system, meaning it is straight to Wi-Fi. There's no requirement of additional hardware or other accessories or other components. It connects onto a network. That network has to be 2.4 gigahertz bandwidth, by the way, just to keep that in mind. But it locks onto that network and then begins to communicate through the cloud-based app for you to have full control and full color or color tunability across your luminaire selection. Now, there's another advantage here that the engineering team was really good about recognizing and building for. And that is, what happens if you don't have a network? You know, what happens if your network goes down, is a better way to put it. Well, even though there's power flowing through this controller, so if the network goes down, I guess the fixtures just turn on and go full color and that's it. Not at all. The room controller has a unique feature, is that when it recognizes that there is no network, it automatically flips and goes to essentially a Bluetooth control protocol. So if I was sitting in my office right now and my network went down and I walked out and I hit that room controller, lights would go up. I could walk back in, turn it back on. I could change between my favorited scenes and my favorited settings. I could tune my lights and dim it. What it does is it saves that last recognized setting that you've built for that room on the app for this platform, and it is able to communicate that information to those fixtures. So even though you don't have a network activated, you will have no idea that you don't when you're using your lighting. It is a seamless transition, a seamless flip over with no interruption. Now, I mean, if you lose power, you're dead anyway. But that's nothing new. No power to a panel, and no power from the panel means, you know, no power to fixtures. So that is what it is. But the takeaway, straight to router, you know, straight to the network. 2.4 gigahertz is what it communicates on. And once it's set up within, you know, I'll get into the app in a second. But once you have it set up for that room, the room controller takes care of everything else, regardless of your network activity. All right, we're doing okay for time. I'll speed it up a little. I'm getting slightly long-winded, but back to this slide, we're going to unpack the other half of it, and this part's really straightforward. We've got sort of two entire sides of our product line now. We've got smart fixtures, and now we've got non-smart fixtures. Non-smart fixtures are essentially everything that's legacy product. I'll call it that for the sake of our meeting here. Mostly I'm referring to products that haven't yet gone smart. So these are fixtures that are phase dimmable. These are fixtures that might have color temperature selection built into them. These are fixtures that could otherwise be decided upon to have certain design elements that, you know, might be an architectural or spec product, but are phase dimmable at the end of the day. They've got a driver that can accept changes in energy levels to output changes in its own energy levels. So to work with this, we have the opportunity to bring a couple of smart devices to the market. We've got a 3-way switch available as single pole as well, depending on how you wire it and how it's used. And we also have our Lightline OnCloud dimmer. Similar to some other concepts you might see in the market, this does give us control and connectivity at the switch leg. The big difference that
I'm going to interrupt you for a second there,
Sure.
because I think there's a point that we kind of glossed over that I think is super important for the crowd that we're hearing here.
Mhm.
So this isn't the first smart home system that's been out there. You know, it's been on the market for a little bit. You know, I'm going to name names just because we're going to. You know, you got Lutron Caseta, you've got Insteon, you know, at one end of the market, then you've got like the Control4s and the Crestrons at the other end of the market. So the question is like, where does OnCloud fit in? Like why OnCloud? Why, like, you know, like why would I buy this instead of Lutron or Lutron Caseta, or like why would I what's the value add that we're bringing to the table here? And there's a point that I kind of want to like really hammer home here, because this changes everything. This is why you guys are logged on to here. This is what like the whole difference is. When you deal with a Lutron Caseta, that's what's on the screen here. You have your app and you're controlling the circuits, right? You're controlling the dimmer on the wall. And then all your other fixtures are hardwired to that dimmer on the wall. So you turn on, you got 6 pot lights, you're turning on 6 pot lights, you're turning off 6 pot lights, you're dimming 6 pot lights. Our architecture is totally different. We're talking to each fixture individually. That means that if you've got 6 pot lights wired together and you want to turn 1 on, you can do that. If you want to turn 3 on, you can do that. If you want to set up a scene where, you know, during the day, it's 5,000K in your white kitchen, that's cool. But then at nighttime, you want to have 1 pot light in the corner on red or on blue, you can do that. And that's the value add of the system, because what happens is each individual fixture is on the internet by itself. Each one is a device on your network. Each one is, yeah, we can flip back there. Each one's a load. And that's the magic of the room controller, is that we can now set up a wall device to talk. We can press on and we can turn on 1 out of 6 pot lights. We can make 1 out of 6 pot lights blue. We can make 2 out of 6 pot lights blue. So that's the kicker. And the other thing we kind of skimmed over is that, you know, the leave on thing. This is a remote control that sends advanced features into the room. You can set up the room. And oh, the other thing is for all the electricians on the phone, when you're thinking, okay, so how do I use this? Like, what's going on? What's going on with 3-ways? How does this whole thing work? For the last 100 years, the architecture has always been, we need 1 control per luminaire group. What does that mean? Okay, it means like, okay, I got a kitchen. I got under cabinet lighting, pot lights, and a pendant. That means I need 3 switches. And in the houses that we're seeing built these days, I've been into kitchens where they've had like 2 banks of 3-gang switches, or like 2 banks of 5-gang switches, or 3 banks of 3 gangs, because you've got 2 circuits of pot lights. You've got 2 pendants, you've got under cabinets, you've got uppers, you've got toe kick lighting, and it's turning into this like distributed wall of devices that's like, you know, when I bought my house here, I can show you, like I walked into my bathroom and there was a 5-gang switch box in my bathroom. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, I got the shower light, I got the vanity light, I've got like all these things. You don't need that anymore. You have 1 device for the entire room. And then if you want to control the fixtures individually, you set them up as a scene and you toggle through them. Then if you want to have a 3-way, you don't need a different 3-way device. All you got to do is bring power to this room controller, and you can put a 2nd, a 3rd, a 4th, a 5th, a 10th. It doesn't matter, because they're sending a signal directly to the fixture. That's new. That doesn't exist anywhere else.
Since we're collaborating here, I want to add another point into that. That exists in the market on the AV Control4 Crestron, super high-end, super complex side of the market. Now, where this is fitting in that's unique is that once you put one of those systems into place, if you have an etched in keypad, you then need a certified installer to come in and change what you've already set up, reorganize the home, and then re-etch the keypad. And it takes the control and the decisions outside of the actual person who's using the device and puts it into somebody else's mind. And until you live in a space, it's hard to really know what you want to happen when. So this allows you to set it, but then make the changes without having to have somebody come in and make those changes. It keeps the cost sort of in that more affordable range than having a full system that needs to be serviced and updated. And it's hubless. So you don't have a server that you need to keep on site, control, maintain, etc. So just wanted to add in that point.
So yeah, I think that's a really good point. And to add on to that, when you start doing distributed power management systems like a Crestron or a Control4, you start having to rethink how you wire a space. You start doing home runs of copper back to a centralized area, which is you're committed, you're in. With our system, you still wire your space in the same way. You don't have to have all of these runs back to a central computer. I actually had a really interesting conversation with a Control4 implementer yesterday, and I was showing the products. The homeowners liked it. The guy was implementing. He was doing the Wi-Fi for the building, and he's an integrator. And he says, "So where does the server go?" I'm like, "There's no server." He's like, "But like, how do you control it? Where's the server go?" I'm like, "There's no server." He's like, "Well, how does it work? Like how much does the server cost?" I'm like, "There's no server." It's like, mind blown. The server, you buy the light fixture and the control system comes free. It's in the cloud. It's already built into the price.
That's a perfect segue into what the control system is. And I'm just keeping an eye on the time here. Yeah. Sorry, I just want to, I know everybody's given out, a chunk of their afternoon, and we're getting towards the end of the day. But do you mind going into a quick overview of what the control system is and the controls that then become into the homeowner, user, or building manager's hands?
Okay, we are successfully back on track.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, I'll continue on. So what we just jumped over, yeah, and thank you both for jumping on. That's perfect. We will unpack that here in the next couple of slides and get some time for questions. The dimmer and the three-way that you'd seen, legacy product, traditional phase dimmers. So those are going to enable those, as Dan had said, anything downstream from that switch leg is going to now be accessible on the cloud, but you are just controlling everything that's downstream. You don't have individual fixture addressability or control. So two things to work on the system. They're all OnCloud enabled. Gives you the ability to communicate through a central app, to create your scenes and your features. We're going to talk about the app in a second, but the big one is with that room controller, you do break that conventional sense of circuit design, switch leg design, and you've got fixture by fixture control as broad as you like, in an unlimited way. You can address and control those fixtures to create a scene or an environment that you're after. So let's unpack what is enabling all of this. What makes the thing work? So we have partnered with a company called Wiz. Wiz is the software side of this program. We are the hardware. We make the fixtures, the luminaires, the drivers, everything that produces the light we make. They are the ones that have the platform that it sits on for it to communicate and operate. What this company did very, very well is that they figured out color coordination from a platform perspective. So they've been a formidable manufacturer in the consumer side of things. They made a couple of lamps and they did very, very well. The advantage here is that they succeeded where some others might have failed, in that they didn't need additional hardware to make their system work. There was no intermediate hubs that you had to connect through. It was straight to Wi-Fi, straight onto the network. Big one, color. They've got color coordination to be able to easily cycle between your settings. Your consumer's desire ultimately is available at the fingertips of that individual at any point in time. Dan said it, Sarah had echoed it. It's a free control, it's a free app. It's right there. All of the settings exist on the cloud. All of the security is taken care of there. We just have the ability to utilize that platform and its simplicity to take our fixtures on cloud and give them that full color control. So you can see some of the advantages of the program here in these snapshots. And I do want to point out on the left side, you'll see how easy this thing is to work. Again, we're talking about color solutions here. We're not talking about just switch legs. So it's not like you just go and kind of choose what you want here. Typically, you're creating a scene or an environment in a space. So the way that it works is you do that by room. Makes sense, right? You probably wouldn't have, one full setting. You don't just walk into the house and turn every single light on. You probably want to have different rooms in different areas, having different environments for your use when you need them. And that's how this app works. So you see it right now, it's got a depiction of a living room, like a sofa chair, and that's the emblem that you use. You've got it, labeled as you like. And within that, you've got the fixtures available to you, different icons. In this case, it's just showing some of the options, but you can individually select those fixtures that you've placed into that room, and you've got full control on color, output, and basically on off, however you want those fixtures to work within that space. So as Dan had said, you could go to the room controller and tap on off, they'd all go on or they'd all go off. But if you've got them set as scenes, customized down to the fixture level by color and output, you can individually address each one of these and save up to 4 options on that room controller. That's huge. That's huge. When we consider the other available solutions to the market, as Sarah had mentioned, some of the larger lighting control solutions, there's no difficulty with this. You're using that same wall box, you're using that same individual device to be able to, device placement to be able to do this. And now you can get away from those 3, 4, 5 gang boxes because you can do it in one. You can control those different fixtures however you want because you've got that ability to address them individually. Along with that, you get some other advantages that are available in the market to a degree, but now, of course, we're exploring it more in full color. That's setting up schedules, that's being able to customize scenes. Energy monitoring is pretty neat because we're communicating it at the fixture level. It, of course, can report its own data and its own information back. And here's a huge one for everyone on the call. Again, Wiz is the software, we are the hardware. If there are any questions, concerns, if there's something that needs to be addressed in real time, you can do it right through the app. Wiz offers 24/7 support in 8 different languages. There's a text field right there in the help section, 24 hours a day. We've all used it very, very frequently over the past 6 months as we've started to explore and get engaged with the product as it's coming to market, and it's excellent, right? So any concerns, like they have that ability to ultimately communicate with you and understand your settings and your setup to be able to provide solutions to you. If there's hardware issues or if there's something with the fixture, that's on us. But when you get into pairing, you get into how do I create a scene? How do I, manipulate my colors? How do I select the fixture to turn on and off appropriately if there is a power outage? Like all of these things exist in the app and can be predetermined, and the help is available right on the platform itself. So there's no callbacks to a contractor, to yourselves. There's no callbacks that go through distributors to us. It can be done right there with the end user at 10 o'clock at night when they're trying to figure out how to create a scene to better maybe mimic their circadian rhythm or turn on off lights as part of the schedule. The last slide here, so we can leave about 10 minutes for questions, is one that just does sort of show the simplicity of an additional feature like circadian rhythm. I mean, you can create scenes, there's dynamic lighting that can be set. Now, obviously rhythms and schedules are available here, but the circadian rhythm is a really, really cool one. And this goes back to the basis of this company developing the platform around color. Circadian rhythm is very much a real thing. We're talking about human-centric lighting in terms of what that means for people and how lighting can influence mood throughout the day, depending on intensities and color. And this allows one to do it, again, at the fixture level. And it's as easy as dragging one's finger around the portion of that software to be able to choose the time of day and what color intensity you want at that portion in time. The fixtures themselves, being smart, will reciprocate and just replicate that programming as much as you like. You choose your days, you choose your times, it's all saved in there and ready to go. I think that might bring us to the end of it. I don't know, Dan and Sarah, if you had any additional comments to lay forth on the platform itself.
Steve, do you have any more slides on here showing the pro setup?
I don't. I can pop out and they're right there. I can do that.
I think we'll probably do another follow-up webinar on Wiz Pro, setting up Wiz and different features and benefits and how to actually set up a space. But we'll save that for a follow-up presentation. Thanks so much, Steve. I think let's hop into some Q&As here.
Awesome. Can I take the Q&As? There's some really good ones in there. I'm so excited. Can I answer them? Am I allowed?
Oh, it's all yours. Yeah, by all means.
Okay. So Dave Kelly.
And the coffee that you were drinking there.
No, Dave Kelly, our newest agent out in Saskatchewan. I am so glad you asked that question. Dave says, what if you lose your Wi-Fi or your modem craps out? That's an amazing question. So I want to explain how this thing works. We got the slide there for it. Each individual fixture is talking to the cloud. So what happens if like your cloud breaks? How do you turn your lights on and off? So there's a really cool technology. We developed it, didn't patent it, wish we could have, but it's really, we kind of hacked Wi-Fi. And the way it works is, you guys ever like log on to your phone, you're trying to log on to a Wi-Fi network and like you see like all the Wi-Fi networks that are around, maybe not in Saskatchewan, but like in other places where like lots of people have Wi-Fi networks. Well, what that means is that you're having communication, right? Because your phone is reading everything that's around, even though you didn't log on to that phone. So what that means is that you can, what access points like Wi-Fi routers can send signals and other things can receive signals, even if they're not part of a network, right? Like, because you're not part of that network that you're seeing, right? Your neighbor's Wi-Fi, you're not part of that, but you're still seeing it. So what the room control, that's called a Wi-Fi control frame. And it broadcasts stuff like the name of the network, the time of day, and a bunch of other stuff. It's all built into the Wi-Fi standard of like the things that you can broadcast. So what the room controller is it's a little mini access point. It's a little mini Wi-Fi access point. And when you press the button, it broadcasts a Wi-Fi control frame, like an SSID. And all the fixtures that are around that can hear that learn how to follow the instructions. And so each button on that Wi-Fi controller, the on, the off, the dim up, the dim down, all send out individual signals. So what that means is that after they've been paired and you've taught the fixtures in that room how to listen to that room controller, that you can actually unplug your Wi-Fi router altogether and you can unplug your Wi-Fi and that button will still work. In fact, all the agents on this call are going to have a demo kit. And when you plug in your demo kit, there's no Wi-Fi. You're not connecting it to the Wi-Fi. We've paired them at the factory and you can turn the fixtures on and off and control them without even ever connecting them or pairing them to a router. So we completely bypass the network from the room controller. Now, your Google Assistant's not going to work. Alexa's not going to work. If you have any like IFTTT, so like when the Leafs score a goal, your lights turn blue. You know, you can program that with our system. By the way, literally, you can hook this up to TSN through IFTTT, and you can make your lights turn blue when the Leafs score and red when the Habs score. Like that's a thing that you can actually do. But that's not going to work if you lose connection to the internet. Good thing the Leafs never score. So anyway, in live I would get a reaction to that. So the point is, for the question, if you lose your Wi-Fi or your modem craps out, you can still control your lights from the wall and all your programming is saved. And then when you reconnect it, then you can get your advanced features again. All right, that was the most extensive answer I can give to that question. It still works.
I like that it was if the Leafs score, they turn blue, and when the Habs score, they turn red.
Pretty much, yeah. Okay. Is a switch leg required from the room controller to the light fixture? The answer to that is yeah. Leafs fan here, easy. And Brody was all into it too. Anyway,
our attendee list just went from 76 to 75 when that comment came out.
Okay.
Oh, it's a bit faster now.
Is a switch leg required from the room controller to the light fixture? No. That's the coolest part of the whole thing. It is not required. So something has to go to the light fixture. But in the application of like tape lighting, for instance, you could very much hardwire your tape light, put the driver for the tape light in the basement, hardwire that back to the panel, or hide like a toggle switch down in the basement, and then put a room controller in the same room as the tape light. And there's no hardwire switch light connection between that room controller and the tape. That's all Wi-Fi connection. So the driver is remote mounted in a closet somewhere. You bring the tape forward, run some LVT from the driver to the tape. You put that CV controller Steve was talking about in the room, and then you can put 1, 2, 3, 4, as many room controllers as you want, and you don't need a switch leg between the room controller and the fixture. So that's that answer. What else do we got? Is the room controller wired or wireless? The answer to that is both. So in a retrofit application, the room controller replaces your existing dimmer or toggle switch when you replace the light fixtures. In the normal operation, the AC power passes right through the room controller. If you need to turn off the power, not turn off the lights, but turn off the power, you long press the off button and you trigger a relay built into the room controller, which actually cuts the power. The LED indicator in the top right will turn red, and there will be no power traveling through that room controller. You can safely work on the lights, or well, you should flip it off at the breaker, but there will be no power going through the room controller. What was the question? Is it wired? So that's the wired portion. So it directly replaces it. Now, to power the room controller, you require a line and a neutral. That is a piece, it's a little microcomputer inside that thing. So the room controller is functionally a load all by itself, right? There's a little microcontroller in there. So it needs to be powered. And Darla, you do need a neutral for it to work because that is a load on the circuit in the room controller. So it needs to be powered, but it doesn't need to be, the downstream doesn't need to be necessarily connected to the fixtures. Okay, so that answers Darla's question. Yes, you need a neutral. And that answers the other one. So how will these switches work retrofitting into existing lights? Andrew wants to know. So we have, Steve, can you flick back to the other slide? That's what, no, you know what I'm going for.
This one.
That's the one. So the stuff in the green box on the left side retrofits existing light fixtures. You've got an incandescent chandelier. You've got somebody else's fixture that we don't make is smart. You hook up these and you can, it acts like a regular dimmer. So as long as it's a dimmable fixture, you can hook up the dimmer and then you can use it from the app. The room controller will actually control the dimmer if you want it to. You can make that room controller, you can use the dimmer on the room controller and that'll operate the dimmer on the left-hand side. So all of the stuff on the left-hand side is for not smart fixtures. And then the room controller is for the smart fixtures. Hopefully that's as clear as I can get on that one. The room controller, Nancy, the room controller does come with a wall plate. It's included, no extra charge. We don't have a part number for the wall plate all by itself. Okay. Caitlin, when a network is in place, does the room controller only use Wi-Fi or does it use Bluetooth mesh as well? That's a really good question. Our current hardware, everything we're shipping right now, uses Bluetooth during the pairing process and for sharing credentials between the different fixtures, et cetera, et cetera. Our next build of hardware, which will be shipping towards the end of 21, will be full-time Bluetooth mesh, which is great because it acts as a range extender if you start having Wi-Fi issues. So current build, which is 1.0 to 1.1, use Bluetooth only during pairing, and then build 1.2 forward uses Bluetooth mesh. Effectively, if you're doing projects towards the end of the year, it'll be full-time Bluetooth mesh as well as Wi-Fi. Okay, when will it going to be available? We have to wait 2 weeks for pricing. I sense that there is some passive aggression in that. It's available now, and talk to Steve, and we will not have to wait 2 weeks for pricing. We have a fully ready price list. Okay. Are the dimmers phase adaptive? No, they are not phase adaptive. They are we should talk about that. They're forward phase. They are tested with all of our fixtures. So our Sigma program, our Luna program, our Slim LED program, our Flex track lighting program. We've tested them for flicker and dimming performance with all of our fixtures. When you use other manufacturers' fixtures, your mileage may vary. I suggest testing them for compatibility beforehand. Is temperature of the space a consideration to take into? I believe, they're on the data sheet. I believe we're good to -10, something like that. It's on the data sheet. So I wouldn't use the device like externally in, Winnipeg in the winter, but for like an unheated garage, that's not a concern, provided you're not getting down to like -10 or -20 or something like that.
And just before you pop forward though, there is a really cool attribute on the Sky fixture,
Yeah.
rating to -40.
Right, the fixture is rated -40.
Fixture itself, yeah.
But the device, but the room control and the device are not rated
Yeah,
-40.
correct. Yeah, but something to note for those colder parts of the continent.
Okay, so there's another question here. Brody wants to know how much they cost. I'm not going to get into pricing on this call, but what I will say is that roughly, generally speaking, double your price. So if you had a Slim LED, a regular one, double it to get to OnCloud full color. If you had a Luna, your regular price, double it to get to full Wi-Fi. So in terms of rough numbers, that's how we're positioning it in the market.
In the Canadian market.
In the Canadian market. Okay, Caitlin, Halo Home.
Regional sales manager for pricing.
Sure. So Halo Home has had issues on 2.4 gigahertz. How is Lightline handling this? Okay, I got to unpack that question a little bit. Firstly, I don't know what issues Halo Home has had on 2.4 gigahertz, so I can't handle Halo's issues, is sort of like the first part of it. The second is the broader question of what network does this work with? You do need a 2.4 gigahertz network. OnCloud is not compatible on a 5 gigahertz network, roughly speaking, because the higher your frequency, the more you're going to get, the less propagation you get. So at 2.4 gigahertz, we get much better signal propagation throughout a space when you start passing through walls and through bricks and through drywall and stuff. So all of that has to happen. The most important part when you're setting up your 2.4 gigahertz network is make sure you have a separate SSID from a separate network name from your 5 gigahertz network. Certain routers like Google Mesh like to try to upgrade everything to 5 gigahertz. That breaks this. The workaround for Google Mesh specifically is if you create a guest network, the guest network stays on 2.4 gigahertz and doesn't try to get upgraded. So I'm not sure what Halo's issues are, but all IoT devices, I think all IoT devices operate on 2.4 gigahertz because it's slower, but we're not streaming Netflix on our lights. So you don't need a huge bandwidth, but it's a lot more stable frequency.
One comment I do have related to the Halo Home, I don't want to talk too much about that, but something that comes up often in my Q&As is with the Halo Home, you need to put in an email address that's tied to you. So if you were to sell your home, rent it out, or leave, you're connected completely to your lights and you can't pass over ownership. One thing that wasn't mentioned here is that the Wiz system is completely anonymous. You do not have to put in any personal information at all to get it working. You can set up your own home and put in your own ID, and that allows you to connect to your lights and go back to them. But you're not locked in with any contact information.
And you do have the ability, Sarah, just to build on that, to be able to share access inside the network and outside of the network even as well. And that's a 2-layer authentication access granted procedure. So I can control lights in like Atlantic Canada, and I've done it from here. And it's just a 2-layer authentication. It's a proof. You have to prove it on that side, and then they grant you access over here.
Actually, that's a really good point. I'm going to add one more thing onto that because it's pretty helpful. Is you have guest access or you have owner access. If you pass somebody guest access, They can access your lights while they're on your Wi-Fi network, but once they fly across the country, they leave your home, they can no longer mess with your lights while you're sitting there trying to watch a movie or eat dinner. If someone has ownership access, they can access your lights from wherever they are located.
Yeah, good. Okay, so getting back to questions, Caitlin's responded, it slows down the home network. So, okay, so that's a really good thing I want to talk about, sort of best practices in deployment. You want to think about how many devices you're going to be putting on this network. So roughly speaking, a home router that you get from your ISP, your internet service provider, that comes included, they charge you like $5.99 a month rental or something like that. Those are residential grade devices. Not residential, we'll call them entry grade devices. And they work up to like 25 connected devices. So if you live in a house and there's like 5 smart homes, a couple Apple TVs, 3 or 4 Sonos speakers, a laptop or 2, maybe an iPad, fairly connected home, you're already about, 50 to 70% of the way through maxing out the capacity on that device. So you're really only going to get like 4 or 5 or 10 OnCloud devices on there before your network starts suffering and you have things like difficulty pairing or lights not responding to commands and stuff. So one of the things you want to do, especially as a contractor, if you're deploying this in a home, is you want to think about how to size the network appropriately. So my home, I mean, I have 4,000 square feet. I've got 70 downlights and, probably 15 dimmers on top of it. So I've got, I'm talking about 80 or so connected devices before, before the TVs and the speakers and my phone and all that comes in. So in that kind of installation, you really want to make sure you want to have a separate network for your IoT devices. If you're going to be doing a whole home, separate network name, separate infrastructure. You're not going to be happy trying to put 40 downlights and 20 dimmers on top of the same hardware that you're network that you're streaming your Netflix on and trying to have 3 Zoom calls and remote learning. It's a lot to ask for it. So and so if you're going to be setting out a separate network to do that, you can have a dedicated 2.4 gigahertz network for your IoT stuff, and then you can put things like your Ring doorbell, your IoT door locks, or all those other things on that dedicated network for connected devices, and have a different network for your Netflix and your email and your banking and your Zoom calls and all of that. And you segregate your network traffic. And that's not an OnCloud thing or a Halo Home thing or anything else. It's about the fact that we're putting devices on a network. And home networks have grown from, hey, I want to play like World of Warcraft with my buds, to like internet connected homes where we're having lots of different devices on here. And we have to start thinking in a different kind of level for sizing the network to the number of devices. So for all everybody on here is either electrical or lighting professional, that's the kind of thing that you want to start with when you're entering a project and you're doing this. Hey, am I doing a basement? Am I doing a TV room with a couple of with 6 downlights? Or am I deploying this across an entire house? And will the internet ability support this kind of thing? Now, everybody's thinking, oh, that's another cost. I didn't think about that. If you have a Google Mesh system, you're looking at like $300 to $800 in terms of IoT, in terms of networking hardware, to be able to support a connected home with 100 to 200 devices. So that's what your kind of add-on cost is. So it's not so, and then that solves the 2.4 gigahertz question, which is it slows down my network. Well, that's easy. Move your 5 gigahertz traffic to your production network, and move your IoT traffic to a 2.4 gigahertz network, segregate them, and then you won't run into those sorts of things. But these are all considerations that we're here to help with. You have questions, call in, ask for help. If you're an electrician, you're like really comfortable wiring and AC stuff, it's like, wow, I know I have to deploy a network. Call us, we can point you in the right direction or make some hardware recommendations. It doesn't have to be super complicated, but it definitely is a consideration when you want to deploy any IoT system, whether it's Lightline or Halo or anybody else's. Like, think about how many devices you're adding to the network and can the network support it?
Yeah, and I think as you're saying it, it's sounding scarier than it is for some people potentially. It's really not that complicated for any home where you have multiple levels of living or lots of different walls separating the spaces, you're going to want to have some sort of mesh network anyway set up in that space. TP-Link Deco, Google Mesh, that kind of thing. That's going to allow you to reach different parts of the home. I think over the last, over the last year that everybody's working from home and realizing that they need to be on Zoom calls in one room and their spouse maybe, or their kids on another Zoom call in another room, everybody's moving to these mesh networks anyhow. And so it could just mean putting one more node into the system, that kind of thing. It's not having another whole internet set up in your home. It's just a matter of extending the range across the home.
And I think just to say, I mean, this isn't something necessarily just exclusive to the fact, here's Lightline with lighting and it's forcing this. I mean, if we look at how technology advances, Dan, you'd mentioned the devices on door locks. As all of this home connection and home automation grows, this is going to become more of a common sense sort of procedure, is to look at this as part of our kind of construction design or our layout design of what a automated home or a connected home will look like. It's just now we're seeing it in real time because we're talking multiple fixtures. Like, this is a relative thing to most of us as consumers or contractors or in the distribution world. Like, we just know that, but it's exposing it to say, okay, you got access points here that can, multiply. And now we have to look at the whole network as something to be able to, be stable with it and to be able to support it. So I think it's touching the edge of where things are going anyway, depending on just how much you want to get connected. Lighting's helping us get there.
Absolutely. There was a question that came in. I think we sort of mentioned it before, but is there an OnCloud module to wire ahead of LED strip lights to tie into the cloud system? So yes, we have a product called our OnCloud adapter, and that can be purchased as a kit. Thanks so much, Steve, for going to the page here. It can be purchased as a kit or individually. As a kit, it will come with a non-dimmable driver, the adapter, as well as a power feed, or you can size up the driver to whatever you need and order them individually as well. So that could be wired in before the tape goes in.
And I did mention, just keep an eye out for simplicity. We're looking to make this very easy to spec out and order, and that's going to be kitted part numbers that will be inclusive of the luminaire. As an example, the tape can exist as one part number that will have the components you need in it, as an option to having to spec out every individual component, should one not need to, or
Hey,
should one just take advantage of it.
Can you go back to the previous slide? So I want to just build on what we were saying there. So in the bottom right here, we've got these three boxes: the white box with the dongle in the middle, and another dongle. The dongle in the middle is the device that you can buy. You take 24 volts in, and then it's 24 volts out, and that's available in a 1-channel, 3-channel, or 5-channel output. And that's the OnCloud adapter. So if you already have an existing 24 volt power supply, it's low voltage class 2, so it doesn't need to be encased or enclosed. Those are low voltage connections that can be made, just wire nutted or shrink tubed in free air, and that will take any low voltage 24 volt device and put it on the cloud. So what Steve is saying is you can do it two ways. You can buy an entire kit where you have everything you need, including the power supply, or you can buy that as a standalone device to adapt to existing 24 volt constant 24 volt product.
Absolutely. Another question came in if we're going to have any bulbs coming out. So we do have A19s available right now in a 2-pack with a remote control. We're in discussion right now about broadening that, but there is an A19 option currently available.
So Josh asks, what's the maximum amount of devices that can connect to one room controller, as they're only rated 600 watts? So I want to make sure that we're, thinking about how this thing works again. This device isn't carrying a load. It's a pass-through load, and it needs to be connected to smart fixtures. So the most powerful smart fixture that we have is like 12 watts or something. So 600 divided by 12 is a lot of fixtures. Give me a second here. 600 divided by 12, that's 50 fixtures. Now you got to derate it a little bit. So call it like 40, 45 fixtures. But remember, this isn't the kind of thing that you're going to be putting an incandescent load on. It's not compatible. If you want to be using an incandescent load, then you've got to go back to our dimmer, which is on a, can we go back to the slide? Right. The one forward. So the stuff on the left-hand side is where you're putting your incandescent loads. The room controller is only for smart loads. And the magic of it is that when you press off, it doesn't cut the power. It just turns off the fixture. That's the different, that's the new thing. That's the innovation we haven't really thought about, that we haven't dealt with before. Okay, so dimming, minimum dimming. Isn't that a fun topic?
You love this one, Dan.
I do. You know why? There's no standard. There's no standard for measuring minimum dimming. So it's really fun. I'll tackle it this way. As it stands right now, the software goes down to 10%, but the hardware actually dims better than that. So we're working on upgrading the software to be fixture specific to ensure that we don't have bottom dropout or flicker. Right now, if you hook a light line Luna up to the dimmer, like a traditional regular Luna up to the dimmer, it actually dims down to about 3%. But our smart fixtures connected to the room controller are dimming effectively somewhere to like 5 to 7%, even though the software will say 10%. It's really a lot more challenging than it should be to correlate a number on a screen to like the actual like spectral distribution power that's coming out of the fixture. Send me an email after. I'd love to talk about that offline. It's a huge topic of how to actually measure dimming percentage. But as it stands right now, the software will be 10. Your actual real world performance will be slightly better than that. Okay, what will happen if you use a standard switch with dimmers if your room controller stops working? I don't understand the question. What will happen if you use a standard switch with dimmers? If your room control, okay. Oh, I think like the room controller stops working.
So it's a failure.
If your room controller stops working, you disconnect it from the wall and you wire in it like a traditional dimmer, I think.
Oh, yeah. So what happens if you hook a dimmer up to a smart fixture? You break the smart fixture.
Yeah. Okay.
Not compatible.
It's going to be like putting a dimmer on your television.
Yeah, it's like trying to adjust the temperature of your refrigerator by putting a dimmer on the circuit. It doesn't do it. Okay. Oh, Nancy, you were the first one to ask a question and you lost to get answered. I'm so sorry. Is the tape light coming in certain lengths? Yes. 5-meter rolls. I like straightforward answers.
The classic tape comes in 1-foot increments, 12-inch increments.
Yeah, no, these are 5-meter rolls, and we've got all the connectors. We have so connecting tape is fun because it's a 5-channel tape. Like our connectors are wider and they've got like a lot of teeth on them, but they grab right into it, and then you can. We have like the butt connectors, the linking connectors, all the cables and remote power feeds and stuff that actually have like 5 contacts on them. They're really cool.
Dan, I was told,
come in 10 packs.
And I haven't confirmed this, but I was recently informed that our 5-channel tape or 2-channel tape, if it's cut, the remainder of the tape can still be used.
Yes, yeah. We have all the connectors to grab onto it. We have all the.
So in the past, when you cut off the end of the tape, you'd have to toss it. This can be reused.
Yeah, just make sure you start from the right end.
Okay.
Are we doing anything with receptacles? As it stands right now, Lightline does not have a receptacle offering. That may change, but we don't have anything for sale today. I think we got to the end of the questions and answers. Any more questions? Type them in. Positive feedback. I have a fragile ego. Tell me we did a good job.
Dan, you were great. It was awesome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Awesome job.
You too, man.
All right. Thanks so much, everyone, for tuning in. We really appreciate your ongoing support, for coming to listen to us, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Grant. Appreciate it.